Good morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. And, of course, obviously this morning we have a great personality, and we're going to have a different perspective on agriculture. A lot of folks don't know that there's more to, a lot more to farming than just hitching up your team and heading out to the field. So we're going to get into that very in depth this morning. Judith K. with your leisure this morning, and by your leisure and by your permission, instead of kudo this morning, I might go into a rant and rave.
Oh, sure. I'd like to hear that. Everybody in the world is ranting and raving.
I want to make sure that we keep job security, so I'll be very careful about what I say. You know, this country is just in a mell of a hess with all this political correctness stuff and all these mobs and so forth. And ladies and gentlemen out there in the airways, if you think that those folks just kind of showed up as a mob because somebody was a little disturbed about something, you believe in the tooth fairy. Those folks that show up with these mob actions all over this country, they're bussed in, they're flown in, they're brought in by whatever means. They just didn't happen. They're not the local people. And this matter of tearing down statues, it just beyond, you can't believe how stupid it really is. Somewhere along the line, somebody has to, and we ought to be very tickled to death, Jeff and Jim, Judith, that we live where we live. We avoid some of that big city inaneness. But, you know, the latest thing I saw yesterday, now this shows how damn far this has gone. There's an Hispanic man by the name of Robert Lee, sports announcer for Entertainment Sports Network. And in their infinite wisdom, or lack thereof, they've decided that he wouldn't call a particular event that's coming up. Now, how damn stupid can it get? All right, that's my rant and rave.
We've just about reached it. But you know what keeps coming back to me? Do you remember Miss Jane Fonda and the Vietnam War?
Oh, yes.
And at that time...
With not much fondness, I can tell you that.
Yes. At that time, they said that they figured 10% of the people in the mob either knew or remembered why they'd gathered. The rest of them were just there for the shenanigans. And I wonder if that's still true today.
It's beyond a normal person's ken to understand what makes people like that tick. But we've got a great guest this morning.
Yes, we have.
Why don't you get right with the business?
We shouldn't have started this way.
No, because we could go on till 10 o'clock.
We could go on for days.
That's exactly right.
Well, it has. Days and days and days. Yes, we have a good guest. Holy Friday.
And Saturdays, too.
And Saturdays. You know, I understand so little about farming, except they do nice work, and I appreciate the fruits of their labor. Okay? And I thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, well, it's important.
You done good. Jeff Martin
really good.
Received a Distinguished Service Award from Chicago Farmers. He's been affiliated with them for 20 years. And his award was for something that is so complex. This man must have a brain that just won't quit. It's certainly, maybe...
It's in his genes both ways, I can tell you that.
Well, he's a lot smarter than I am, I can tell you that.
I'm not going to argue the point.
He's explaining to me about his secret recipe and the things that you have to do in order to preserve the soil. You can't just take for generations. You have to give something back. Like Bill says, you have to put something on the bar beside your elbows, don't you?
That's correct.
Yes, and you're working at it very hard.
Assiduously, yes.
Yes, I think it's just a miracle. Whatever made you start thinking in this direction, or did your dad and your grandpa have some idea that this was the way to go.
Now, you talk about salt of the earth in every sense and every definition of that word. His dad and his grandfather, both grandfathers for that matter. But go ahead, Jeff.
Well,
you know, Jeff, I have to say one more thing. His last name is Martin. I never did say that.
Oh, yeah, that's Tom's brother.
Okay, go ahead.
our family, our whole generations of family have been soil conservationists, and through L.K. Scroggin, who settled where my son currently lives on the original homestead just south of my house. And they've always been conservationists, and I started farming in 1976, and Bill and I were talking a little bit earlier what kind of got us started on this program. You know, we've always been, my Grandpa Martin was a wildlife person and a conservation. He worked for FSA, you know, and during his career. And the story I allude to is standing out in the cornfield during a dust storm by my house and watching that dust cut the corn off at the ground. And you know, we kind of decided at that point, you know, we want to try to look into what we can do to change things. So that's kind of got us the ball rolling on, you know, promoting and putting conservation into more of an effect on our farm. And that was back in the 70s, and we've kind of just progressed from there.
Joe and Josephine Smith on Main Street in Galesburg or Lincoln or wherever, most of them do not have a true cognizance or realization of what it takes to put a crop in the ground and then in the fall harvest that crop. It's no longer just planting crop and going back to the Sangamon Street and standing at the bar all afternoon. There's a lot to be done, and there's a lot every day.
Yes, every day. It's like you said, you just don't go plant the corn and come back in the fall and harvest it. And, you know, we've progressed in our farming operations from, you know, we started no-till and minimum till, and now we're at the point where we're strip tilling corn, no-tilling beans to help promote soil conservation. We've been planting cover crops for the last 4 years in an experiment on 15% of our farms, which is in the fall we'll plant like oats and clover or radishes, and that promotes, like radishes will sequester nutrients out of the soil that are there, pull them up into the plant, re-release them in the spring. So it'll hold those nutrients in a form where they're not erodible. And so there's just a lot of things that we have been doing to help promote, you know, the growing of our crop.
Where did you ever figure out that radishes could do that?
Well, it's just a progression of people who've studied this, and as far as a farmer, myself, it's a constant research and learning experience, educational experience to go out in and see what people are doing, and farmers are really innovators. And, you know, we've learned most of our things from other farmers. And so the last 3 years we have been introduced through our agronomist about trying to promote and better our soil health. And it's one of the most exciting things that I have ever been involved in my 40 years of farming. Soil health is the microbial biology in the soil, which is the whole key to crop production. The microbes, microbial biology in the soil is what turn the organic matter and the nutrients into the soil into things that are plant available. And if these nutrients aren't plant available, there's thousands and thousands of pounds. I got a number here. There's 6,000 pounds of organic carbon, 60,000 pounds of potassium, 2,500 pounds of organic P, 1,000 pounds of microbes in the soil. And all this fertility in the soil does no good unless it's plant available. And that's what our soil biology does. And over our past, and we're all guilty of what we've done in the last 40 or 50 years, but through our use of certain products that have a lot of salts in them and certain chemicals and tillage, we have destroyed a lot of our microbes and soil biology. We've got a microscope now set up at home in my office, and we can take a soil sample and put that under the microscope, and we can see the soil biology that's there, the microbes, or the lack of microbes, and the lack of soil aggregates. And so through the promotion of this, we are actually manufacturing some of these microbes on the farm, in the shed, and we're working with a company called AgriBio, who is also have some products that they're producing that we are applying to the soil, and we are reintroducing some of this biology to the soil that we have destroyed over the past 50 years. And we can look at this where we've been doing this for 3 years. We can take these soil samples under this microscope and look and see the increase in the soil biology that we've been able to add to the soil. So, we're pretty excited about this, and we think this in combination with the cover crops is also a food source for these microbes, like throughout the winter when some of our other crops may not be available for a food source for the microbes. And, microbes some of them will go dormant, like in winter in the cold and in dry weather, but some of them will live, and so we're just really excited about what we're seeing as far as promoting soil health, soil biology. And we've been able to measure some of these things. We have an instrument called a refractometer, and it measured the flow of sugar flow through the plant. And that's the whole key. In a perfect world, that corn plant will produce 100 pounds of sugar a day. But we're not near that. We're probably 40% of that currently. But this refractometer will give you a reading of the sugar flow. And 2 years ago, we were at 4 to 6. Now we're up on this refractometer reading of like 9 to 12. So we're seeing an increase in that sugar flow through the plant. And so our goal is to get, up to 25 would be great, but if we can get in that 15 range. So we're seeing with the addition of these programs that we've been using that we're getting an increase in the sugar flow through the plant.
To what end? I don't understand the sugar flow issue.
Well, sugar flow is the whole key to one of the whole keys to crop production. I mean, the sugar flows through the plant into the roots, and the microbes that make the plant available nutrients in the soil. And this whole process, that's what, then the sunlight is the other key. The photosynthesis is what helps produce the sugar. And you've got to have a healthy plant and a balanced nutrient plant. You have to have your balance of all your nutrients in the soil to make all this work at, we're never 100% efficient, but to increase our efficiency. And if I ask you what you think the most important nutrients for the production of a corn plant would be, what would you say?
The most important nutrients?
Yeah.
Well, after I've talked to you, I guess I'd say all these microbes.
Right. Well, it's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. The common answer is nitrogen. The common answer to people is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. But the yield in a corn plant is made up of 45% carbon, 5% hydrogen, 40% oxygen.
I hope you're paying attention, because there's going to be a pop quiz on this.
5% of the balance of the nutrients is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and other things. So carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen are the whole key to this thing. And the sugar production kind of fits into that whole scheme of things.
I'm sitting here thinking, Chemistry 101 some 70 years ago. It never occurred to me I'd be sitting here in 2017 talking with a gentleman who is qualified to teach chemistry in any college.
Well, I don't think I'm that far along, but
Well,
my office is now kind of like a lab, and like I said, it's the most one of them. I'm really excited about this thing.
Well, you obviously are really steeped to because number one, there's going to be an economic payoff, but over and above and beyond that, well, still an economic payoff because the soil is going to be enhanced and protected down through the years as you do what you do to enhance soil health, and those are the two words that are really what we're talking about.
Yeah, and like you said, you've got to have a return on investment in this world and that's one of the things that we've seen increased yields. We've seen a more healthy plant. We think with a more healthy plant, we're getting a better balance of nutrients, and with a more healthy plant, you get a more healthy corn kernel. So
I suspect the Monsantos in industry are probably not your best friends. They don't come out and take you over to Chestnut and buy you a lunch or anything.
Well, we're trying to work in conjunction with all these people and make a more efficient use of what we're doing. So we're kind of adjusting. We're not eliminating any of the products that we've been using in the past 40 years, but we're trying to use them in balance and make a more efficient use of those products.
You mentioned before we came in here that down the road a piece, it's possible, likely maybe even, that you be able to use fewer herbicides and pesticides and more efficiently use the fertilizers by employing this method.
Yeah, this
with
biological
the
products. Yes, we're hoping to. Like I said, we're not talking about eliminating everything we've been doing for the past 50 years, but we're trying to make them for a more efficient use. If we can get our soil biology correct, it will make better use of the fertilizer. There's thousands of pounds of fertilizer in the soil now that are not plant available. And so we're trying to, if we can get this soil biology right, we'll be able to extract some of that stuff that's in the soil, which environmentally will be a huge deal because it's not there, it won't be there for erosion or leaching through the soil. We'll be able to use those nutrients, and we do a lot now of variable rate technology, which we'll apply our fertilizers. We'll take a soil test, and it'll show 3 acres need this, 2 acres need this, and you can put that chip in your fertilizer spreader, and it'll go through the field. It'll spray 40 pounds in this acre, 0 in this acre, 100 pounds in this acre. So through all this technologies, we're going to be able to be much more efficient.
But it's going to make your job bigger too.
Well, it's a full-time job. It's just like I said, it's a day-to-day thing on studying the plants and studying the soil, and like we'll take these refractometer readings like at the same time every day. We're as far as testing to try to get these readings like late morning, and so we can actually see some results from these things. We're seeing these it's called a Brix test, and these readings, like I said, it was 4 to 6, and now they're 9 to 11, and so we can study this and actually see results from what we are doing, and besides the yield, and we're getting better root mass, a third more roots on these plants, and we get wider leaves, which is, sunlight is the whole key to this whole thing. And so if you get bigger leaves and better roots, you just get a much better system.
I hope our listeners are fascinated by this as much as Judy and I, and I'm sure Jim. 648-5510. If anybody has a question of Jeff Martin about I call the atomic age of farming, because that's essentially what we're doing. I'd like to digress just a minute, Jeff, and go back to what the Chicago Farmers Organization. One, what is Chicago Farmers, and how do they relate to us downstate here? And then I'd like to get into this distinguished award you got, which I think is a remarkable thing. So let's take what is Chicago Farmers?
Okay, the Chicago Farmers is an organization that was started in the mid-30s. A group of landowners that lived in the Chicago area, and their jobs were in Chicago, so they lived in the Chicago area, but they might own farmland in Logan County or central Indiana, and a group of them got together and decided we need to meet and kind of find out what's going on in agriculture. So they started this organization. They met once a month, May through September, in Chicago. A lot of their meetings were early days were in Marshall Fields. They'd meet the first Monday of the month, and they'd bring in an educational speaker. They wanted to kind of keep up on what was going on in the agriculture world. So since then, it's kind of evolved into the kind of the same thing, only there's more and more people in the organization like myself that are, not in the Chicago area, but have an interest in agriculture.
How did they happen to reach downstate and pique the interest of the Jeff Martins?
Well,
many of them?
They started 30 years ago. Actually, the person's name, no relation, was Hugh Martin, and he started what was called a Farmland Investment Fair, and it was held in the Chicago area, and they would bring in farm managers and speakers, and it would be a once-a-year event to try to educate people and bring people together on. Well, here's, I guess, back to the reason this started was when we had in the 80s when the land prices went to pot, and a lot of farmers had purchased land at high interest rates, and it was pretty tough. Prices went to pot, and so this Hugh Martin had the idea, I'm going to bring you, Bill Gossett, as a farmer who bought land at 18% and really needs to move it. I'm going to bring you together with an investor from Chicago. So that's how the idea of the investment fair started.
I see.
To bring farmers and buyers and sellers together, and it really worked. And so, I don't know, maybe it was late 70s, we went up to this investment fair just to kind of see what was going on. We thought it would be a good idea to
looking ahead.
Well,
learn something.
I joined the Chicago Farmers that year, and as our family tradition goes with Grandpa Weibel, and I got involved with the organization, got on the board of directors, and I was actually the first live farmer ever president of the Chicago Farmers. Was actually an active farmer.
Not an office holder in some Chicago.
And so I would, I had to conduct the meetings for 2 years, every Monday morning, once a month. So I'd be middle of, the first Monday in October, I'd be sitting in traffic on my way to the Loop, and the boys would be back home farming. But really, it's really a great group, interesting group. I met so many people, and one of the first people I sat next to at one of their luncheons was a landowner that owned 1,000 acres in Mount Pulaski.
Isn't that interesting?
And a fellow who drove by my house every day for 30 years, going to his farm in Indianapolis. So it's just amazing the people that I have met there, and the interesting people. So it's been a great experience for me. And so I got involved and actually ended up being the chairman of the Farmland Investment Fair for 15 years. And had spent 30 days on the phone ahead of the investment fair. It turned into a huge deal because there's investors and business people from all over the Midwest, and actually people from all over the world attended this Farmland Investment Fair. So I had a lot of contacts. I got to do a radio interview with Orion every year, and all the local radio stations, the farm directors, Peoria,
Big O
Springfield,
and Max Armstrong, too. The best duo in agricultural broadcasting.
What an experience to do an interview with him.
We have an experience here. It's called sponsor experience. We're going to take a few seconds now and honor them. Then we're going to I want to ask you about this award. That's very significant. Go right ahead, James. Right back live in the studios here of the WLCN. Program is Viewpoint, of course, each Wednesday morning at 8:15 to 9. We have a very special agricultural guest this morning. This seems to be Agricultural Month. We had a great trio last week here with Blair Herbert and Dave Opperman and James Drew. A little different slant on farming this morning. We're talking about the health of our soil and the soil that grows us our crops. Our guest this morning, Jeff Martin, has received, and that's what kind of prompted us to invite him to be with us this morning, a very significant award from the Chicago Farmers Organization called Distinguished Service to Agriculture. Jeff, I know you're not going to toot your own horn. Briefly, what is that?
Well, it's an award that they've started in 1977, the Chicago Farmers, to give out to people who have really promoted agriculture, and have had an influence on, I guess, other people in the agriculture, a positive influence on other people in the industry, and also promotion and benefiting of the Chicago Farmer Organization, besides outward everybody in agriculture, but also a benefit to the organization itself.
Well, obviously, you've been an integral part of that organization from the time you joined it, and your main health, and besides making a good living, hard way to make a living, by the way, is the soil health, the condition of the ground that you grow your crops in. You've kind of pioneered that, certainly here in Logan County, and in fact, your office has become somewhat of a chemical lab, so to speak. How did you first get interested in well, you remarked about being out in the cornfield and watching your corn being cut down by erosion. Does that begin to kind of trip your trigger?
Yeah, that's what kind of tripped the trigger. And like I said, we've been trying to learn, and through educational, we all winter, that's what we do, is education. You could go to a meeting every day if you wanted to on what's going on.
Well, Jeff, it used to be the old days. They'd come into Dutch Row and sit down at the card table and play cards and drink beer.
Yeah,
those days are gone.
I've probably been to the coffee shop like 4 times in 40 years.
You're busy farming.
I have Grandpa Martin's genes of hunting and fishing, and then community from Grandpa Weibel, so we keep pretty busy. But what triggered this soil health and biology movement is we have an agronomist, Brad Hobrock, has formed a company called AgriBio, and he got us started on this program 3 or 4 years ago. And he had researched some of this stuff. They've been doing some of this stuff for years out west, like in the almond groves and the vineyards and some of these biological products. But it's never been to a point where we thought we could. But I think now it can go in the Corn Belt, And so he got us started on this program, and he's been researching and promoting. He's actually a farmer and agronomist, and he works with an agronomist, Ben Elliott, who's kind of been in the process of manufacturing some of these products and teaching us the recipe for the microbes that we're making on our farm. And so the last 4 years, we've really been gearing up this biological programs and seeing the results from it in yield and plant health. And
let's talk about the growing microbes. Some people have catfish ponds on their farms. Some people grow tulips. You grow microbes. Now, do you have to feed them every morning at 6 o'clock?
Well, the products that go in the recipe, I have to water every 2 days to keep them alive.
Well, let's just take it, not be facetious about it. That's a very serious thing, and it's a very demanding thing. So you're growing microbes, the purpose of which is...
there's a couple products we're using that this AgriBio is manufacturing and come in a jug, and then there's another microbial product that we are actually making on the farm through a process of water and the ingredients in this recipe.
Think of this.
And it takes, depending on which product we're making, 4 to 24 hours to make, and some of this, we have a big vat that we put water in this recipe in and oxygenate it. And part of one of the products we make, we will add a food source with it, which is, part of the recipe, and that feeds the microbes as they're reproducing in the tank. And then one of the products, we don't add a feed source, but when we put it on the soil, then the food source is, corn stalks, cover crops, oats, clover, whatever.
Pardon my ignorance, please. But when you look at the tank with the water and the recipe in it, did the microbes multiply enough so that it comes to pass that you can notice that there's something in the water?
Under the microscope, you can notice. So we will, as we make a batch, we'll look at it under the microscope. You can't know. Microbes are...
I know.
Infinite,
yeah, and there's millions of them, and you can't see them but you can put them under the microscope, and you can see, like, we'll look at a batch and
see that they're multiplying.
See that they're multiplying, yeah, and see that it's a good batch. And so it's a real process. You've like when you finish that batch, you've got to get your tank clean. You've got to because it can turn. These are aerobic is the key thing. Those microbes can turn anaerobic, which is bad. And so you've got, when you finish that process, you've got to scrub it, and we use a phosphoric acid solution to clean it before the next batch. And so it's not an easy process, and this product we're producing on the farm has to be applied fairly quickly.
How do you apply that then?
Well, you can apply it broadcast, like with a sprayer, or several of our people. We've got 8 or 10 of the people in Logan County trying this product also. Because we're still learning, but you can apply it in furrow as you plant. Like, you have a separate process and you apply it in furrow. So we're still learning on what the best application method is, and how many gallons is the perfect goal. So it's still a learning process, but we've seen really good results. We've seen better plant health.
But that's the bottom line of our discussion this morning is what you're doing enhances the health of the soil.
Yes, plant health, soil health is the key, and the soil health is the key to a healthy plant.
Do you tweak your secret recipe once in a while? Decide it doesn't need that much baking powder, or
yes,
a little more?
Yeah, and this is a process that we're learning, and we actually we've just ordered Brad, who we're working with, has a 10-gallon unit, but these units we're producing are 500-gallon units, but we've got a 10-gallon unit coming, and you can experiment with different sources of microbes, and then look on a microscope and see, because there's bacteria, there's fungi, there's protozoa, there's all kinds of different microbes in the soil, and so we're going to learn so much in the next 40 years, about. And Ben, who was one of the agronomists in this agrobio, is just going to be working with Stanford University. They've set up a separate lab for him to come out and try to identify specific microbes. So we're just going to learn so much, I think, in the years to come about this process.
Judith, some people...
What makes an aerobic one become an anaerobic one?
Oxygen, lack of oxygen.
Okay.
Is a key in this process.
So if your microbes become that in their habitat, what do you do with them?
Well, we're introducing the good ones, and that helps overcome some of this process. I still don't know. It's a pretty complex. You just don't think of the soil of being alive, and it is. There are just millions of microbes in that. So, like I said, there's 1,000 pounds of microbes in the top 6 inches of soil.
I think we're in way over our heads. And having said that, Judith, this is one of the most interesting mornings that you and I have had on Viewpoint, understanding the complexity of our soil, and of course the bottom line is what it does to feed the nation.
Yes,
and
the world, even
the world, of course.
And so, to me, it's exciting to be a part of this. It's always been exciting to be a part of agriculture, and like I said, providing food for the world, and to see if we're on something here that can be applied, can be used in the Corn Belt, hopefully, to help everybody increase plant health, soil health, and the end result, a healthier feed source, feed source for hogs and cattle and whatever.
Prior to your becoming just enraptured by this whole microbe thing, you have been recognized as one of 25 best no-till farmers. You got into that a while back. And when you started that, you had to build your own equipment because it wasn't done. When we moved to Illinois, I don't think that was employed very much at all. And then over time, you saw it become just a normal thing, this no-till business.
Yeah. It's a hard sell for. It was a hard sell, and this award from the No-Till Farmer magazine is from the promotion of. We've done a lot of promoting of this for 25 years, and so that award was for what we've done in the promotion of conservation and no-till farming, for the last 25 years, and that was pretty exciting award for me because there's a lot of people in this world that have done a lot of things to benefit, agriculture production, but it's been fun for me to be involved in that organization also. I've done a lot of speaking at their national conferences, and so it's been pretty exciting for me. And like I said, you learn from farmers. Farmers are such innovators, and I've learned so much from farmers more than any other source of education out there. I think.
My young friend Richard Martin, well, he's not young anymore, but he had an 80th birthday the other day. He's an old fellow now. Richard Martin, right out there at Burtonview, is an innovator and always on the cutting edge of something new to try to do a better job of farming. And the old days of, as I say, they put the crops to ground, and they had the rotation crops, and that was pretty much it. But I remember hand shucking corn with my granddad. So we've come a long way now.
Yeah.
Hand shucking corn with my grandfather, sitting here this morning on July 7th, August the 20th, 23rd, talking about microbial farming. Now, if that isn't advanced, I never heard of one.
And I would invite you guys and anybody else that's listening to this program to give me a call and come out and bring a soil sample and look at your soil under the microscope. It's
I would
pretty
want
cool.
to do that. 792
3934.
3934. Jeff Martin, 792 3934. Just for Mr. and Mrs. Joe Smith on the street, it'd be an interesting thing for him to see that phase of agriculture. We go down the road to the highway, Route 10, 655, whatever, and we see their crops growing and say, oh, they look pretty good. Well, we don't know what look pretty good. But anyway, getting down to the grassroots, so to speak, is the fun part of it.
Yep, it sure is. And you can also, we've started to put a series of articles. We have a website, martinfamilyfarms.org, and we're on our blog portion of that page, we're putting a series of articles relating to this microbes and soil health and soil aggregates and kind of what we're doing. So if you kind of want to follow that and kind of, get in the educational process, you can go to that website, and we're trying to blog once a week on different articles on what we are doing on the farm.
Repeat that.
It's martinfamilyfarms.org.
Okay. I'd like to ask you something, too, about, you mentioned earlier that you like to hunt and fish. And
that's in his genes.
And as a hunter, they used to talk years ago about they were worried because the farmers weren't leaving enough
cover
and areas for the animals. And I can understand that, what they pay for their land, and you don't get back much by leaving a big area of trees and cover for the animals. How do you convince people?
Well, it still has to have a return on the investment, but our outlook on ROI is somewhat different. Seeing wildlife is part of our ROI, but and I think through what we're doing, we can show people that you can plowing is what really hurt. It put all the residue underground, and there was nothing left for the birds to eat. So getting back to what we're doing in promoting soil conservation, it's leaving a lot more cover for the birds. Planting cover crops, is great because we've got standing stuff out there that gives them room to hide and stuff throughout the winter, gives them more food source. So, we could talk. That's a whole other couple hours of talking if we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, we could go there. We're about to run out of that doggone time again. Quickly, Mr. Martin, how have you seen the size of farms change from, let's say, back in the 40s to 30s to 40s to here 2017?
Well, if you just drive around the countryside, there's no more farmhouses left hardly. I mean, it's just when you retire, I take your farm or the neighbor takes your farm, and we're farming so much more now than than we ever used to, and that's because of the technologies and the machinery, and that's made it possible for people to expand their operations. And I see more and more young people getting back into farming, which I think is really good.
Yes,
They're still not, the age comparison is still way out of balance, from my age to the younger people. But and there's so many jobs in agriculture field, with all these technologies and microbes and everything. So there's a huge avenue for having a career in agriculture, not necessarily farming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one thing. A lot of people think a career in agriculture has everything to do with being on the ground. That's not so today.
No, not really. There's thousands of jobs out there in the agriculture world.
Our time ran out. We try to close with a quotation that's somewhat analogous to the subject matter of the day. Mr. Howard Buffett. Now, I don't know whether that's the Omaha Buffett or the Decatur Buffett. But Howard Buffett said, "Soil is a living ecosystem and is the farmer's most precious asset. A farmer's productive capacity is directly related to the health of his or her soil."
That's what we're talking about.
Thank you very much for being with us, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it very, very much.